everyone, I hope y'all are having a great day, and today I'll be reviewing Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, the third and final book in the Grisha trilogy. The first book is Shadow and Bone, the second book is Siege and Storm. I have reviews up for both of them, so I'll link those down below, and the third book, as I've said before, is Ruin and Rising. And so this is the conclusion to the Grisha trilogy, and to be honest, I feel like I've had a kind of strange relationship with this trilogy because I've enjoyed it, but I haven't really liked it. I do feel like these books were worth the time that I spent reading them, and they're not bad, but they're definitely far from my favorites. And so that leaves me in this weird limbo where I don't know if I would recommend these books right off the bat. Like if I saw you at a bookstore and I was like, hey, do you need recommendations? Check out this trilogy. I probably wouldn't do that. But if you already had it in your hands, I'd be like, yeah, give that series a try. I think it's definitely a solid series, and they're going to look gorgeous on your bookshelves if you decide to purchase a copy for yourself. But like content-wise, I would probably stick to borrowing it from a friend or like loaning it from the library. I do think Ruin and Rising was a satisfactory conclusion, which is important when it comes to last books in this series. I think Leigh Bardugo tied up the major plot lines and she gave her readers, resolution, and I can't remember the specifics or the details of this book because it has been a while since I read it and I waited so long to review it. This is becoming a pattern that I need to be breaking. But I do remember thinking that this was a decent ending. I was not upset, I was satisfied, it was solid. I feel like overall as a series, every single book in this trilogy has a very, very slow pace, and then in the last quarter of the book, everything hits the fan. So in that way, it makes the climax of the novels very exciting, but then in comparison, everything that came before it seems very lackluster. So I'm sorry, but I think that's all I'll have to say about Ruin and Rising without getting into spoilery specifics. So if you haven't read this book, I would advise leaving in 3, 2, 1, bye, bye, bye. Alright, so Ruin and Rising. First things first, I gotta tell you straight up front that this review is going to be pretty trash because, like I said, I don't really remember a lot of the things that happen in this book, so I'm only going to talk about like 3 major plot points of the end. So as much as I would like to do like a further in-depth analysis of the story, I just won't be able to because I just don't remember what happened. But anyway, let me talk about the things that I do remember. Things I remember happening in this book. Number 1, we found out that Mal is the third amplifier, which was surprising to me. I mean, looking back on it, I suppose it wasn't not led up to. You know what I mean? Like, it is true that Alina discovered her power through Mal, kind of. Upon reflection, something that's a little ironic that I'm realizing about the first book is that Mal is the reason why Alina discovered her power, like in the fold, but also in the very beginning of their storylines, Mal is the reason why Alina suppresses her power in the first place. But anyway, about Mal being the third amplifier, I didn't expect it. I did always know that Mal had something special about him. I think I mentioned that in my Siege and Storm review, or one of my reviews for the previous books, but I said that Mal is like too good of a tracker to just be a normal human being. Like, he must have something special about him, and it turns out he's an amplifier. And I'm not exactly sure what the specifics of amplifiers are and how they function. Like, I don't understand how creatures can be amplifiers, like mythical creatures, but also a human. I don't know how he became one, and I could just be forgetting what I read, and it could have been explained in the book. But if it was explained in the book, I did not retain that information. When Alina killed Mal, I could not believe it. Like, I literally could not believe it. I was reading it and I was like, this is not happening. This is not real. Mal did not really just die. Leigh Bardugo did not kill off Mal in this series. No, that did not happen. I don't know, it's just my instinct that when a main character dies in a book, especially if it's the last book in a series, I just don't believe it. I just have like some instinct that tells me that the author is going to fix it by the end, that somehow they're not really dead, or they're going to come back to life or something like that, and I keep on holding that hope until the very last page until I'm proven wrong. But in this case, I was not proven wrong, I was proven correct, and Leigh Bardugo did bring Mal back to life. I feel like this happens kind of frequently where authors have a false death and then the person ends up not actually being dead forever. And I think authors do this because it's just so ballsy of a move to actually kill off your main character, especially if it's in last book, because then you've spent like years with them. So I feel like they kill the character for the emotional effect that it has on the reader, and then they fix it later so that our pain isn't permanent. And obviously there are some pretty huge examples that would go against this trend, where someone kills off a main character and they actually stay dead. In the arms of the angel. But that was not the case here. The second thing I want to talk about is Nikolai and how the Darkling turned him into one of those weird creatures. Not gonna lie, despite what I just said about authors kind of doing false deaths, I actually thought that Nikolai was gone forever. I thought he was not gonna turn back into a human. He returned to the throne and is presumably going to fix Ravka, and I like Nikolai a lot. I do think that I like him less than other people like him. I just don't love his character, but I do like him, and I like his role in the story. I think he's a little cliche, but I do like the fact that he's there to rectify his nation, because that's a burden that someone has to take, and he voluntarily desires it, whereas I wouldn't want that on Alina. Third thing I want to talk about is the Darkling, because the Darkling is arguably the best character in this entire series. He's without a doubt the antagonist of the trilogy, and I don't think any argument would sway my opinion on that. However, he's a villain that's written so carefully, and I don't mean carefully like hesitant, I mean careful as in like full of care. Like Leigh Bardugo pays so much attention to crafting his character and does it with so much like affection almost and so much empathy that she crafts so many layers to him, and that makes him such a great villain. And it's weird because I never really felt that from the Darkling until this last novel. So the Darkling, or Alexander as we know he is named, is so layered and so vulnerable under this very thick pretense of power and strength. And so I like that Leigh Bardugo gave the Darkling such an ambiguity, because normally when the villain of a series is defeated at the end, the moment is joyous and everyone's so excited because yay, you defeated evil. But not in this case. When the Darkling dies, Alina and I personally we're like left conflicted, because yes, he was a bad guy, but he wasn't wholly bad, and you can almost see his side of things. I just love the way Leigh Bardugo made his character. He's definitely a villain, yes, but he's a villain that you sympathize for, and I feel like we don't see enough of that. So now that I've read the entire trilogy, I genuinely believe that the Darkling is probably the best thing about this series of books. On a different note, I love the idea of Alina and Mal creating their own orphanage, because it's just, the story comes full circle. It gives us a solid resolution, especially when we realize that they're Grisha friends and Nikolai still visit. I like Alina and Mal together. I know I've said this before, but I really do like them together as a couple, and I like Mal. I know he's not a popular character, but I like them. And I liked the ending. I did think that it was neat, but it's not wrapped up in a package with like a bow on it. You know, there's a little bit of pain still there. It's a little bittersweet, mostly sweet, but it's not completely perfect and happy, and I appreciated that. And yeah, that's actually all I have to say about Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, the third and final book in the Grisha trilogy. Let me know your thoughts on the conclusion. I would really, really love to know. And also let me know what your favorite book of this entire trilogy was, if you had one. So thanks so much for watching. I hope y'all have a fantastic day and happy reading. Goodbye.